Hello friends of Powerhouse Bakery and all my favorite divas and dudes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Suzanne Parker and I'm the owner and founder of Powerhouse Bakery. And what we do here is show the world that healthy can taste amazing. And that's what I got in store for you today. There is nothing more special than chocolate. And we are doing chocolate in a souffle, which sounds so decadent. And I'm going to show you that it tastes decadent, but it's actually really healthy. Everybody wants to have a dessert, and whenever I teach people about the healthy rules to live by, one of the things I love to say is that we should be able to enjoy lots of foods, but portion is key. And if you've been working on your best foods list, one thing that I always really encourage you to do is include some special treat foods in that best foods list. And notice that when we look at our best foods, and we've got proteins, we've got carbohydrates, and fats, when we build that best foods list, where does chocolate fit in? Well, the good news is chocolate absolutely is going to be a carbohydrate, it's going to be some healthy fats, and heck, it's probably even got a little bit of protein in it since it's from a bean. But for the most part, we want to learn how to make a treat food like chocolate keep good company, which is how we make any food on our best foods list go from good to great. So if we happen to be a chocolate fan and we want to figure out how we can include chocolate in our best foods list, we got to have some really great qualities that we can add to that dessert or that recipe. So when we're looking at making a recipe, we think of, in general, a treat food is going to be high in sugar, right? Well, instead of using regular refined white sugar, how could we bump up the nutritional value? Well, here at Powerhouse Bakery, we use a lot of fruit juices like organic blueberry and cherry juice. We use honey. We also use a really awesome product, maple syrup. So when we look here at pure maple syrup, we think of different grades of maple syrup. And this here in the small fine print says formerly grade B. And now they've changed that because so often people thought grade B meant not as good. But truly grade B is a good thing because unlike olive oil, where the first press of the oil has the most flavor and it's the most delicate, when it's coming to maple syrup that's coming out of a tree, the last press has the most minerals. Who knew? And so getting the very final squeeze out of that wonderful maple tree actually is loaded with more minerals than the higher level first press. So maple syrup that is going to be organic and from that later press is going to not only going to have more minerals, but it's probably going to have a little more of a robust flavor. And so that's why oftentimes the traditional syrups that we put on pancakes and waffles isn't a grade B or a super organic flavor, because oftentimes people aren't used to that. So I encourage you to give it a try, and next time you're shopping for some syrup, look for one that says formerly grade B, and now it's going to be called grade A dark color, which is again kind of a euphemism because we were afraid that grade B meant not as healthy when actually it's more healthy. So if we look at some other ingredients that I'm going to put together in this wonderful souffle, we also have our famous flax seeds. If you know anything about Powerhouse Bakery, you know that I add the mighty seeds to just about everything. That's chia, hemp hearts, and flax. And flaxseed is a great plant-based source of those omega-3s. It has loads of lignans, which are fibers, which we also want to help our gut stay healthy, but not to mention a great dose of those phytoestrogens or those isoflavones. And remember that when it's a plant-based product and we're not taking it in supplemental fashion, but in a real food, it's a great way to add to our healthy anti-cancer diet eating. Another item I've got on my table is this oat flour. So we've heard of oatmeal being a super healthy breakfast, and I agree with that. But what if we wanted to take it to a recipe and enjoy a sweet treat later in the day? Oats are still going to be an awesome choice. And when you make it into a flour, it becomes so versatile. So you know here at Powerhouse Bakery, we are gluten-free, and oat flour is in fact gluten-free, which is confusing because you know when you make oatmeal and it kind of has a stringy, thick texture, that in fact is gluten. But when it's oats, The gluten from oats is not the same as a wheat gluten that for some reason has caused an allergy to develop in many people. The gluten that comes from the oat is quite different, although it is going to be a source of protein, which is something we definitely want when we're building a healthy menu plan. So oats are a great source. They're gluten-free, they're easy to tolerate, they're loaded with fiber, complex carbohydrates, and not to mention they make a great sweet treat. Let's keep going. Of course, I've got some fantastic vanilla. What could I do in place of vanilla? Well, gosh, the ideas are limitless, because you know that I love to use essential oils. We could use tangerine essential oil, we could use coconut emulsion. There's all kinds of ways to add flavor. But when you want pure vanilla, this is a great one. Notice that it's not imitation vanilla. I really believe that if we're going to use vanilla, we should use one that's organic, or at least made from pure vanilla bean. And if you've never done vanilla from the actual bean, try it sometime. It's a fun process, although timely. And so when you want to cut some corners on time, this is a great way to have a fantastic vanilla flavor. So my other item, I've got some organic dark chocolate. So this is pure cocoa. No milk, so no dairy. It's just 100% dark cacao, which is fabulous when you're adding to any recipe. Notice too that whenever we're cooking with chocolate, we don't need to have a sweetened chocolate. We want to really benefit from the dark sublime flavors that come right from that cocoa bean. So dark chocolate is a really great idea to add. And just to up the ante of that little bit of bitterness, look what else I'm adding to this recipe. A little bit of instant espresso. Great flavor. Whenever you want to just build on that rich, sublime bitterness of dark chocolate, a little bit of espresso is a great way to go. And then last but not least on my mix is some non-dairy milk. Here I'm using an unsweetened vanilla hemp milk, which is wonderful. It's a great way to add the liquid portion of a recipe, but also getting a little more value from that beautiful hemp seed. So I've got lots to work with in this beautiful palette. Also notice that I have some all-important leavening agents. We're making a souffle, of course, and it doesn't have any eggs, so it's got to have some way to lift that beautiful texture. So I've got baking powder and I've got baking soda, which are going to be really key in making this beautiful souffle work. And then, of course, a touch of salt. So here is the batter already mixed, and I've let it sit for a little while because we want it to bloom, and that's something that's really important in this recipe. It's got to add a little bit of thickness and texture. So notice that it's got beautiful airiness to it, and this is going to help when we put it in the oven because we want it to have a nice, fluffy, gentle mouthfeel, just like a souffle should. And I'm going to be using these beautiful little cups. This is going to be a great little serving size. One of the things I love to teach, of course, is small portions. And when it comes to a wonderful chocolate treat, this is a perfect size. So with this recipe, I actually don't need to add any greasing to my cooking medium. I'm just going to use these beautiful little cups, and I'm going to fill them and then let the cooking do the rest. So check this out. With each little cup, I'm going to add in about 3/4 full. So I'm just going to drop it in. And the recipe that I'm going to give you has you mix your batter and then let it sit for about 10 minutes. And that's when it gets this nice fluffy texture. Now this is a good spot where if I had some add-ins, I could add them in. I could put some nuts in here. The recipe that I'm going to give you actually has you put some chocolate chips in there, which is fabulous. Easy way to go. And we don't want to overfill these because notice how in the finished product they puff up and they just look so adorable. So these were filled just about like this, about 3/4 full. And if again you wanted to do some filling, now is the time to sprinkle it in. And then we just put another little scoop right on the top of each of those cups, and it's going to come out beautiful. So here we go. We're going to add in about a tablespoon to each one. Right on the top. Now it takes a hot oven, so I hope you make sure that before you start your mixing that you preheat to 400 because it needs to be nice and hot. And so once you get your souffles into your little cups, just let them hang out as your oven is preheating and it'll be good to go. So these little babies are ready to pop in the oven. So let me pop them in and then I'll show you how to make the batter. Okay, so I promise it was easy, and here we go. The first thing we're going to do is add in our dry ingredients, and so it's going to take some cocoa powder. And it's important to mix the ingredients separately, so I've included that on the recipe. You want to do the dry ingredients first, and then the wet ingredients, and then you can blend them together. So dry ingredients are going to be the cocoa powder, and then we've got our flax, and we've got our oat flour. So when you're measuring, make sure you do your mise en place, which means you get all of your ingredients out, just so you don't forget anything. And then you've got your oats. There we go. There is our dry ingredients. Now we have to add in our leavening agents. And so teaspoons are so important for this because we want to make sure we get just the right amount. Baking powder, 2 teaspoons. And baking soda, 1 teaspoon. So whenever I use the measuring spoons, I shake it to get it even. We don't want it to be a mound. We want it to be right even with that surface of the spoon. And then it calls for 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt, which is really tiny. So I'm going to use the 1/4 teaspoon, and I'm just going to barely fill it to half. So it does not take much at all. So I'm going to stir these together. I've got my leavening agents, the chocolate, of course the oat flour, and the flax seed. So pretty simple. There's one ingredient that's kind of special in this whole process, and it's one that you wouldn't really expect in a typical souffle, and that is our secret ingredient of tahini. So this beautiful sesame tahini is going to be part of our wet ingredients. Wait till you see how creamy and beautiful it comes out. So I'm going to measure it again the same way. I'm putting it in my reused bowl because it's going to be wet anyway. 1, 2, and 3. And make sure when you do buy your tahini, you get a brand that is smooth and creamy. There are some brands that are thicker and dense, and it's just hard to get the right texture in this particular recipe. All of them are good, but you want to look for a brand that's a little bit more liquidy. And now I'm going to add in my hemp milk. And again, you don't have to use hemp milk. You could use rice milk or almond. It should be unsweetened if you can, because you don't want to get too much extra carbohydrates or sugars. And of course, if you have an allergy, then it's a great way to introduce the milks that are made for people that can't have lactose. So, you know, there's a lot of them now. You could even use an oat milk. One thing to be aware of with oat milk is it could be thicker in this recipe. So at least get one that has the typical viscosity of milk, and that's why hemp milk is one of my favorites. Here we go with our vanilla extract. Again, you could use orange. You could do orange zest. It would be so cool to add in some other interesting flavors. If you've ever had our Happy Baby cookie, the secret ingredient in that is actually amaretto, and so it makes it so delicious. Here is our instant coffee. Remember I mentioned that's a really great little way to bump up just the grown-up taste. It's kind of a mocha instead of just chocolate, which is so delicious. Okay, so here is my ingredients. The only thing left I have is the maple syrup. And it's the same ratio as the milk. So this is a foolproof recipe. It makes it so easy because you really don't need that many different measuring scoops and containers. It keeps it pretty simple. So we've got the nut milk. We've got maple syrup. I've got a little bit of espresso, a little bit of extract, and of course my sesame tahini. Now I'm ready to add the ingredients together. So again, very important to separate them out and then blend them. That just makes sure that you don't get any residue that doesn't mix very well. This is a beautiful texture. Whisk is really important too. So whenever you're putting together your kitchen and you're looking for all the tools of the trade, I love these metal bowls because they never break. They're so versatile and they're really light and easy to work with. Glass, albeit, is prettier, but the aluminum just works great. And if you don't already have at least 3 different sizes of the whisks, I highly recommend it. The metal ones are my favorite, but they've got plastic ones out there now too. But it really makes a difference when you have great tools of the trade. Also, what's important in this particular recipe is you have a sheet pan that is ready to put your little souffles on as you're preparing them. And so having one that is ready to go is so nice, because you want to be able to bring your dishes right in place, and as soon as your bloom has started, you can pop it right into the oven using that little tray. So super handy. Another item I love to use, is one of my favorite tools, are these little scoopers. So notice that the handle is rubber. It makes it very easy to scoop, and that's really what I use when I'm filling up my little souffles. And each of these are going to have a certain measure. This one happens to be 1/8 of a cup, and you can check for the measurement. Sometimes they'll have it written on the side, and this one has it written right on the edge. But that way, it's a super easy way to measure, and you can get them right into the oven without having to grab a separate container. So there we go. This is ready, and it's going to sit for just a couple of minutes. Let me show you the finished product. Here are some of the souffle sizes. These are cute little dishes that I use to make that souffle, and it's so soft and creamy. Right when I took it out, it was puffing up, and as it cooled, it sunk in the center just a little bit, which would be a perfect spot to put some fresh raspberries. Love that idea. And if I use the little smaller containers, they're also very easy, just to pull your spoon in and pull out a soft, luscious bite. And so it's a little bit creamy on the inside, which is just how you'd love to have a souffle. And whereas these didn't have the little hole in the top, you could certainly add some pretty berries to the top and let them kind of soften the edges as you're putting it onto the display. So I just think it's a really pretty display. If you have them on dishes like this, you could put your berries along the side, and it makes it so pretty. So here I've got my little raspberries, and I'm going to just dress the tops. And so here in this one where the hole is ready for me, I'm going to just drop a couple of raspberries in there, and look at how decadent that is. So pretty, right? And then if I wanted to do it on my plate, I can have the raspberries all along the edges. Now you can also cook the raspberries if you wanted to make it a little bit more of a jam style, but I just think it looks so pretty when they're just falling around the edges. And we're celebrating the antioxidant power of chocolate, as well as the vitamin C that is so high in raspberries, and it's a great celebration treat. So make sure that you get some raspberries to top it. You could also use strawberries, another great option. But whenever you can, adding the vitamin C is a great way to help build the immune system. And anytime we add vitamin C to chocolate, we're getting a big boost of nutrients. Remember that the company that the chocolate keeps is always a big part of making our best foods list super healthy. And again, when I look through my Healing Spices book, this has given me all kinds of ideas for these different recipes. The sesame tahini is talked about in here because sesame seeds are a great source of iron as well as minerals. So it's a really nice way to add richness and density to any recipe. So next time you're ready for a souffle, here is your perfect batter. And don't forget to get a cute little souffle cup. They're easy to find at H-E-B or any kitchen store, and they turn out to be so cute. So you can dress them up with any kind of fruit, make it a compost, or make them fresh berries, and everybody will love it. Hope you enjoyed this session, and I can't wait to see what your souffles come out like. So we've got the souffle that is kind of new in Powerhouse Bakery, and we do a whole system of our cooking style where we do cook chill. And so that way the items are easy for the customers to pack and to carry with them. So easy for us to prepare all at once, so then they can have these ready-made meals. And the souffle is so beautiful, but it really needs to be eaten right out of the oven. I've got my wonderful intern Nick here working with me, and we are making a no-cook special treat that a lot of my fabulous divas have asked for the recipe, and so here it is. Drum roll, please. Nick, so tell me how much those little power balls are weighing right now.
So what we do is we put them on the scale, and we want to get them to exactly 1 ounce.
1 ounce, and so 1 ounce gives you a perfect small portion. We sell these in a 2-pack, because one is never enough, right? Or if you want to share it with a friend, it's a great way to do it. What I love about these is that they are no cook. And so with the simple ingredients, we've got almond butter, we've got almond flour, a little bit of coconut flour, and of course the super powerful dark chocolate, which everybody loves, and then a little bit of the milk, the non-dairy milks. And that gives it this texture that is irresistible. What's different about this one is instead of using the sesame tahini, we still are using a nut butter to add as the fat. Do you remember what it is?
That would be peanut butter.
Exactly. Peanut butter and even a little bit of almond butter. And for the sweetener, when we first started this recipe, we found something similar. It was called a fat bomb, and it used non-nutritive sweetener. So I'm not a big fan of non-nutritives. A, they don't taste that good, and B, why don't we just use a sweetener that tastes really good and happens to have some nutrition in it? So lo and behold, here comes back the maple syrup. So this is our version of the souffle, in that it's loaded with the antioxidant power of chocolate. It does not have any oat flour, but in place of that, it has coconut flour and almond flour. So if somebody is trying to follow a flourless diet or grain-free, this one works beautifully. And when we have fast hands working like Nick, we can get a whole bunch of these beautiful power balls made. I don't know, in a week, Philip could probably tell me, we probably go through a batch of maybe 4 batches. Do you know how many balls show up in one batch?
I do not.
Probably a good 150. And so we go through at least 2 batches a week here at Powerhouse Bakery, because once you try a Powerball, you have to come back for a second. So this would be easy for you to do at home. Again, I'm going to share the recipe with you because you guys are my favorite divas. But in general, it's that same ratio. It's almond flour, coconut flour, and dark chocolate, and then your almond butter and peanut butter. So that's going to be your dense richness. It's going to be loaded with all those minerals. So it's kind of a special treat. Well, no, it's definitely a special treat that you can feel so good about because it's loaded with nutrition. And get some fast hands, or get your grandkids or your kids around, and you can make the balls, and it doesn't require any heating up of the kitchen. So I hope you love these, and definitely let me know when you make your power balls. One added benefit is you can also roll these power balls in some decoration. We've seen my team do coconut, walnut slivers or chunks, and it's absolutely gorgeous. And then for the holidays, we even add a little bit of sprinkles. And so it's really an easy way to dress up a super healthy dessert that's loaded with nutrition, and who doesn't love chocolate? So there you have it. Our power balls are ready for you, and I hope you get to make them at home too. So be looking for the recipe. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.